My name is Heather. I'm a 24-year-old office worker. I'm currently waiting for my date with Tim, who I've been seeing for 3 months. Truth be told, it's my first time dating a man. I was raised in a rural area where farmland stretches as far as the eye can see. There are so few people there, I used to wonder if there might be more raccoons than humans. When I moved to the city, the number of buildings and people took my breath away. I grew up in a rather strict household, or rather, due to my dad's policy, I was forced to focus primarily on my studies. But about 6 months ago, I had a big fallout with my dad. I insisted that I'm an adult and I should be allowed to make my own choices. He wouldn't back down, saying that if I wouldn't listen, I should leave. So I stormed out, finally gaining my independence. A friend of mine took me to a mixer, and that's where I met Tim.
Heather, have you been waiting long?
Nope, I just got here. Tim is attentive and kind. Despite being busy, he always finds time for our weekly dates. And then,
could you turn around for a second?
Tim casually pulled a necklace out of his pocket and put it on me.
I don't know if you'll like it, but...
It's beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was thrilled with the necklace Tim gave me as we said our goodbyes. I loved him for thinking of me, even on non-special days. My parents never allowed me to wear a necklace. They didn't even give me birthday presents. As I happily admired the necklace he had given me, a colleague of mine said, "But you know, it's probably from a dollar store." The following day, a junior colleague told me.
Huh?
She said to my surprise, "I don't know what kind of guy he is, but he must think you're easy to please. Heather, if I were you, I'd be mad. Like, don't try to get away with a dollar store item." I was taken aback. I don't know, I didn't notice it was from the dollar store, but regardless of the price, I was happy because it was the thought that counts. "Well, if you're okay with it, then it's fine," she shrugged.
Let's break up.
I was suddenly dumped by Tim on a phone call we've had in a while. I started to notice something was off with him, who used to be so kind about 2 weeks ago. We used to call almost every day and go on dates on the weekends, but the calls and dates dwindled and he became less responsive to my messages. I didn't understand why, so I tried to reach out to him multiple times over the past few days. When Tim finally answered, he had turned cold, almost like a different person. Break up? Why? Did I do something to upset you, Tim?
No, not really.
Then why? I wanted to know the reason, but all Tim did was let out a big sigh.
Ugh, such a hassle.
Huh?
What I'm saying is, let's break up.
All of a sudden? Why? I was flustered and my voice choked with tears, but it seemed like Tim didn't like that.
Poor people always cry easily, don't they?
What? The phone call with Tim abruptly ended, and despite my numerous attempts to reach him, he never answered. Being dumped without understanding the reason, I was really down and I couldn't eat for a while. "Heather, try to cheer up. You haven't eaten anything, right? You're losing weight." My junior was worried about me and took good care of me, but I was still sad. Fast forward 3 years. One day off, I was with my junior, enjoying burgers at the park when a couple walked by. "We're going on a night cruise for dinner."
Oh, this is the popular premium one. Awesome. I can't wait.
I recognized the voice, and when I looked up, there I saw Tim, wearing a glossy suit and a flashy woman wearing a short jacket, a miniskirt, and high heels. I was surprised by the unexpected reunion, but Tim not only didn't notice me, he snorted dismissively at me and my junior.
Ew, that's lame. Fast food at the park totally screams poverty.
"Ha ha ha, if you say something like that, she might cry. We have to watch over her with warm eyes, as this is probably her best." The woman, who appeared to be Tim's girlfriend, not only did not reprimand him, but also joined in laughing at us. "Tim!"
Whoa, Heather, right?
3 years later, the chance encounter was as bad as the day we broke up.
Haha, I'm shocked. I knew you were poor, but you're still scraping the bottom. You're really lame. Breaking up was the right call.
Tim, who was momentarily startled, looked at me, my junior, and the burgers we were eating and sneered. "Wait, Tim, you used to date someone like this? I can't believe it. Were you blind?" The woman entwined her arm with Tim's and waved her hand with their flashy nail art as if to fan herself.
I thought she was the modest type when we first met at a party. She seemed like a food connoisseur, which made me think she might be rich, but she was happy with a dollar store necklace. What a poor girl. It was such a turnoff. And now she's eating a burger at a park. Totally bottom class.
Tim kept sneering and saying horrible things. His attitude and impression had greatly changed from when we were dating, and I was a bit confused. In place of me, my junior raised her voice. "Hey, how could you be so rude? Apologize right now."
You're annoying. Birds of a feather flock together. People like you always have a big mouth.
I totally get it. They bark back right away, but in the end, they're just like a barking dog with no bite, right? They continued to look down on us and laugh with a superior attitude. Hey, enough is enough. Heather is... Let's just ignore them. But Heather... My junior seemed still upset, but I saw people around us whispering and looking bothered, so I calmed my junior down.
Ha ha, Heather, you can't even argue back. You're really hopeless. Well, enjoy being poor.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like you'll ever be able to pull off brand name clothes like us. What the heck? While I was calming down the fiery subordinate, the two of them left briskly. Heather, aren't you upset? Losing to that fake brand couple? Could it be you still have feelings for him? To my still furious junior, I shook my head, implying it's not what she thought. Wanna go on a dinner cruise? Huh? The junior was caught off guard for a moment. And are their clothes really knockoffs? Upon confirming my nod, I explained my plan to her. Ha ha ha, let's give them the show. A few hours later, dressed up, my junior and I headed for the dinner cruise. There was a long line for the popular dinner cruise, where people could enjoy city lights from a luxury liner and fancy dinner. Noticing the couple we saw in the daytime in that line, my junior and I walked past them.
Huh? Heather?
Tim waved his hand in dismissal as he noticed us.
What's up, broken lowly woman? You miss me so much you followed me here, even changing your clothes. No can do. Honestly, I can't deal with someone like you.
Next to him, Tim's girlfriend was also laughing. You regret it that much? Too bad you can't get a ticket now. Even I had a hard time getting this. She waved the tickets and grinned. Too bad for you. My junior, in a cheerful mood next to me, pulled out the tickets from her purse. Those are just regular tickets, right? You struggled to get those? Heather can easily get express tickets, even on the same day. What?
And not just express, but the most expensive private room, premium tickets. Those are not less than several $1,000s, right?
Seeing their shocked faces, my junior grinned. Well, good luck with the line. Leading my grinning junior, I bypassed the long line and headed towards the express gate.
Why?
What the heck, Tim? What's her deal? She isn't just a lowly woman, right? Their voices reached us from afar. Serve them right. Isn't that right, Heather? My junior seemed happy that our revenge went well. Half an hour later, as our departure time approached, Tim and his girlfriend approached us on the exclusive terrace where we were enjoying our welcome drinks. Shouldn't this area be off limits with your tickets?
Shut up and explain.
Tim approached aggressively. As my junior frowned, she whispered to me that she was going to call someone and quickly turned around. Unperturbed, Tim continued to pressure me.
Why does a lowlife like you have express tickets? And you even made a fool out of us in public. Thanks to you, we were laughed at while we were in line. We've been embarrassed and can't keep quiet anymore.
That's right. You must have gone into debt or something to force your way through. Now get laughed at by the express passengers. Apologize now for a poor person overstretching. As the couple kept making a fuss, the other passengers on the terrace started to gather around. Then Tim, who was staring at my chest, let out a creepy chuckle.
Even if you somehow managed to get the ticket, this is not acceptable, Heather.
Huh? As I tilted my head, Tim put his hands in his pockets, puffed his chest out, and looked confident.
Well, even if you change your clothes, I bet it's just some cheap junk. Did you dump all your money into the ticket, strutting around with a necklace from the dollar store, and you think you're some big shot? Gonna live off of just water in the park tomorrow, huh? Haha, no, that's funny.
A dollar store? I stared at Tim intently as I repeated his words.
Are you really into these kids' toys? But come on, it's pathetic for an adult to be wearing dollar store stuff.
Tim pointed to my necklace and laughed loudly for everyone to hear. As the murmurs among the passengers grew louder, Tim's girlfriend too raised her voice. Timmy, you're lucky you dumped this poor woman. Now you're in love with me. Both of them laughed, calling me a poor woman again. I didn't think you were this kind of person when we were dating. I regret being so blind. As I retorted, Tim laughed as if it was the funniest thing he'd heard.
That's rich coming from you. She's a real lady compared to you. I'm embarrassed that I even dated someone like you. Give me back the time I wasted on you, you poor thing.
Tim's voice echoed throughout the patio. As the crowd around us backed away, we heard some people hurrying toward us. Security, over here. Catch them, those two. A junior colleague led the security officers who swiftly surrounded Tim and his girlfriend.
What the hell, man?
Get out of our way, you're ruining everything. Although they protested loudly, their tickets didn't allow them access to this area in the first place. Moreover, their ruckus attracted a crowd and security managed to hold them.
We're customers, you can't just grab us like this.
You should be grabbing that woman. She's the one who doesn't belong here, she's poor. But the security officers maintained a stern look, glaring at the rowdy pair. Despite this, Tim did not stop hurling insults at me. Enough already! My junior colleague raised her voice. I don't know what you're misunderstanding, but Heather isn't poor.
Huh, are you just bluffing? Hilarious.
That's right, you liar. It's not a lie. There are people here who knows her, right? At the urging of my colleague, a few hands rose among the passengers. Raise your hands those who can confirm that Heather is the future president and that this cruise is managed by a subsidiary of the large company run by her father. Hands were raised.
Huh?
Tim and his girlfriend finally stopped their resistance and let out a dumbfounded voice. Their mouths were wide open.
Future president?
Unable to grasp the situation, Tim looked back and forth between me and the other passengers. What does that mean?
You said you were just a regular employee.
At the time, I was. I opened my mouth slowly. I was fed up with all the business studies forced on me, so I quarreled with my father and left home. I chose to work at a company unrelated to my father because I wanted to be away from him. But then, 2 years ago, my father fell ill and I returned home. When I was down being dumped by Tim, I accepted my father's apology, who had softened due to his illness, and returned to the path of management.
It can't be.
In a state of shock, Tim was further devastated by my junior associate. Tim, your outfit tonight, top to bottom, was all my doing. You wanted it to look low-key expensive, so it may look plain, but you needed hundreds of Benjamins.
What?
Oh, and the necklace is separate. Do you think it was a dollar store toy? What a pity. Heather, how much was that? About $100,000, I guess.
What?
No way. Chuckles leaked out from the onlookers as Tim and his girlfriend seemed like they had their souls sucked out. I apologize, everyone. My father is always under your care. Today, he invited everyone as a thank you for your hard work, and I didn't mean to intrude. Yes, the reason I was able to get tickets was that today was just that day. The people present were the employees and their families. Tim, realizing my toy-like necklace was actually an ultra-luxury item worth over $100,000, was wide-eyed. His face turned pale as he finally grasped the situation.
Heather?
He had lost all his momentum from before under the cold gazes from the surroundings. Realizing now is too late, I was actually happy with a dollar store necklace. I've never been to a dollar store because I've always been studying and I'm not interested in clothes or accessories. My junior associate gave a wry smile beside me. Right, Tim, you're not into that sort of thing, but don't worry, I'm here for that. I'm quite the sharp-eyed selector. Plus, your sense in the food market is top-notch. The burger you had for lunch will be all over the country in a month. Don't underestimate fast food, okay? Tim, slumped with his shoulders down, was turning to ashes along with his silent girlfriend. Security, please escort them out. The junior associate urged their departure with a teasing wave.
Wait, Heather, I'm so sorry, I was wrong. I'll apologize for everything. I'll break up with her, so...
What? Flip-flopping now? Who do you think got you on this cruise in the first place?
Shut up, you flashy woman. You don't see your gaudy brand clothes at all.
What did you say? You're not cool at all, even in your shiny clothes. Apologize to the clothes, say sorry for not being suitable for brand items. In the end, as security was about to escort the two arguing among themselves, I smiled and said, You two seem to think each other's clothes are brand name, but those are knockoffs, aren't they?
Huh?
What? The two looked at each other startled. You can fool each other, but you know you're wearing fake brands, right? But I'm thinking, if you can fool each other, doesn't that mean neither of you have an eye for quality? Well, I can't really talk since I can't tell the difference with dollar store items. The passengers, noticing my sarcasm, giggled again. Ugh, you. Don't mess with me, you. Shaking off the security, they both hurled insults at each other. Well, they won't be able to sit at their dinner table anymore. They probably overreached to get their tickets. The junior associate shrugged. The dinner course was so good I wanted to show off. I wish they could have at least eaten it. You're so serious about it, it's funny. The junior associate laughed out loud. But all the same, while it makes sense for you, should I really have let you buy such an expensive outfit for me? Absolutely. Between us, the CEO is about to change soon. My dad is fine now, but he's saying he can't handle the load anymore because of his age. This outfit and necklace you chose, I plan on using them for the inauguration ceremony. Will you attend in that outfit as well? Well, if that's the case, I'm thrilled. I'll follow your lead from now on. Let's stay friends even when we're old as grandmas, okay? Yeah. With such conversations, we enjoyed a dinner cruise. A few hours later, as we disembarked from the ship, Tim was waiting for us.
Hey Heather, let's give it another shot, you and me. I promise I'll turn over a new leaf. 'Cause I don't think I'll ever meet someone as pure-hearted as you, who can be moved by something from a dollar store.
Tim's belly grumbled loudly as he begged pitifully. It seems they had been isolated in an empty room during the cruise as their ruckus was disturbing the other guests. You didn't eat dinner, did you?
Nah, skipping a meal ain't a big deal. More importantly, I beg you, Heather.
In response to Tim pleading, I took something out of my bag. Here, if you'd like, you can have this.
Aw, thanks, Heather. Wait, what's this?
A wristwatch from a dollar store.
What? Heather, are you trying to get back at me?
Don't call me Heather. I don't want to see you at all from now on. If this was worth $100,000, you'd be happy, wouldn't you? But if it's a dollar store item, you don't want it. In the end, all you see is money.
Wait a minute.
Excuse me, security.
Ugh.
Tim was restrained by the security guards once again and dragged away. Later, I heard that Tim had caused another uproar, arguing with his girlfriend, and ended up getting reported. Apparently, he's often seen at the park bloating his stomach with water. I'm sure he's broken up with his girlfriend. On the other hand, I, who successfully became CEO, am now working hard every day with a reliable junior at my side. The newly launched burger chain is also doing better than expected, and there's even talk of opening more new stores. I haven't found a new love interest yet, but I hope to meet a good person next time. I should have been brimming with happiness, finally owning the home of my dreams. But instead, I dread every upcoming weekend. Why? Because my husband's parents visit every single week, and I'm treated like a maid every time. Far from getting a break from the stress of work, I only grow more exhausted with each day off. I reached my limit and decided to invite my own parents over, hoping that it would deter my in-laws from visiting. But my husband lashed out at me, bellowing, "Don't you dare invite your parents. If you don't like to live here, you can get out." Well, fine, I'll leave. He'll be the one to regret it. My name is Emma. I've been married to Michael for 5 years. We were previously living in a rental, so we've been planning to buy our own house soon. Michael's parents got wind of this. "Oh, Emma, Michael told us about your plans. You're finally buying your own house, huh?" "Yes, that's right. If you need any help looking for places, just let us know. We're more than happy to help." "Ah, thank you. How about visiting some open houses soon?" I had plans on carefully selecting our new home with Michael, but my mother-in-law seems keen on being involved with every step of the property search. Just yesterday, she showed up unannounced with a brochure for a plot of land that's up for sale. "Emma, what do you think about this property? It's near the subway station and it's spacious enough for a duplex house." "A duplex house?" Apparently, they're planning on moving in with us. That's why they've been sticking their noses in our property search. She's been constantly chiming in with suggestions like, "It would be better to live nearby the subway since it's a hassle to walk," or "It would be convenient to have a supermarket nearby." And here I thought she was just looking out for us, but all along she was just stating her own preferences, thinking that she'd be living there too. I immediately relayed this to Michael. "Michael, your mother came over this afternoon with a brochure for a plot of land that's for sale. It seems like she and your father want to live with us." Yeah, she did mention something like that." "What? You heard it from your mom? Why didn't you tell me such an important thing?" "I thought we could talk about it once it was more concrete. Do you object, Emma?" "Well, yes, because I was thinking that we'd be living you and me. And besides, your mom and dad are still healthy, aren't they? I can't predict far into the future, but I think right now it would be best if we lived separately to maintain a good relationship." "I see. I understand how you feel, Emma." Michael listened to my feelings and was able to convince his parents that we're not planning to live together right now. After hearing Michael's reasoning, it seems his parents finally gave in. I thanked him again for handling the situation so well. "Thank you, Michael." "No problem, Emma. If you're against living with them, then we won't force it. Instead, let's have my folks visit our new home often after we move in." "Of course." After that, Michael and I found the perfect place, and we were finally able to get our own home. Once we moved in, his parents came to visit our new home right away. "Emma, congratulations on the move. What a nice house you have." It seemed that his mother was satisfied with our new home. "Please feel free to visit any time." I told her this with a gentle feeling, and that day, the 4 of us shared a meal around the dinner table. The following weekend, I suggested to Michael that we go buy some decorations for the living room, but he seemed disappointed and told me, "Can we postpone the shopping for another time?" "Do you have plans for the weekend?" "My folks said they wanted to come over." "What? They just visited last week." "Well, they seem to really like this house. You did say feel free to visit any time, right, Emma?" "Well, yes, I did say that, but..." "Could you make dinner and entertain them a bit?" After that, his parents started to visit our house every single week, and every time they visited, they became increasingly demanding. Emma, it's been so hot lately that I'm feeling a bit drained. Something light like noodles would be fine for lunch, but for dinner, I'd like something hearty like steak. Emma, do you know the new pastry shop near the station? It's all the talk around town, so I think it'd be perfect for dessert. Could you buy some? They would come over early in the morning, boss me around, not help with any household chores, and then leave. From the second visit onwards, they would even assume that it was okay to stay over. We're the type who enjoys a good breakfast, so could you have it ready for us first thing in the morning? The demands of my in-laws kept escalating. Between taking care of them, I barely had a chance to rest on weekends due to work fatigue, leaving me even more exhausted. I reached my breaking point and sincerely pleaded to my husband, Michael. Michael, I really want your mom and dad to stop staying over at our place every weekend.
We can't help it. They said they want to come.
Well, you could just refuse them. Between working on weekdays and caring for your parents from morning till night on weekends, I have no time to rest.
Think about it. If we were living with them, it'd be every day, not just the weekends. Your in-laws originally wanted to live with us, but because you were strongly against it, we prioritized your opinion and they gave up on moving in. You should tolerate them coming over on weekends.
Compared to living together, it might still be better. However, it was becoming unbearable to have this situation continue indefinitely. While I was troubled about what to do, I received a call from my mother. Oh, Emma, are you doing well? Sorry, Mom, I haven't been calling you. I'm managing somehow. Really? You sound down. Are you okay? Well, actually, I told my mother that I had been troubled by my mother-in-law's frequent visits since moving. Upon hearing this, my mother sounded concerned and said, That must be tough. I imagine you would be busily settling in after moving and buying necessary items, so I've been refraining from contacting you. Because my in-laws visit every weekend, I still hadn't invited my own mother to our new house. If I invite my mother, maybe my in-laws would refrain from coming over that weekend. That evening, I suggested this to Michael when he came home from work. Hey Michael, I want to invite my parents over this weekend. Is that okay? However, his response was unexpected.
No way, my parents already planned to come over this weekend.
But your parents have come over so many times already. My parents hadn't been over even once.
That's because your parents haven't said they wanted to come.
My mother has been considerate, waiting for us to settle down. She really wants to come.
Oh, really? Well then, invite your parents over when mine aren't coming. They've waited this long, they can wait a bit longer.
Don't you think it's strange to always prioritize your parents who are always over here? Can't your parents refrain next week?
You're my wife now. It's only natural that we prioritize my parents. Anyway, tell your parents that this weekend is not good.
I don't want to do that. You should just not invite your parents.
If I can't call my parents because of that, then your parents don't have to come to my house anymore either. Since they've given you to me, they are prepared to not be able to see your daughter, right?
Wait a minute, that's absurd. Why can't I invite my parents? Regardless of having a married daughter, isn't it natural for them to want to see their family? Despite Michael's stubborn refusal, I made this proposition to him. Okay, let's give up on this weekend. But from now on, let's try to invite each other's parents on a more regular basis, okay?
Ugh, that's exactly what I was trying to avoid. If you're going to suggest something that troublesome, we might as well not invite your parents at all. Let's end this conversation.
And we haven't resolved anything yet.
In my mind, I've already decided. I'm not going to let your parents come over. If you don't like it, you can leave.
No matter what I said, Michael only thought about his parents. He never considered me nor my parents. His refusal to have a conversation and his insistence on his own opinions finally wore out my patience. Fine, if you feel that strongly, Michael, I'll leave, and it'll be too late for regrets.
Regrets? Haha, what on earth would I regret if you're gone? Just remember this, I won't recognize any apologies. Don't come crawling back wanting to return.
Leaving a loudly laughing Michael behind, I headed home. When I told my parents what had happened, they agreed with me that Michael's opinion was unreasonable. My father was particularly angry.
A person who can't respect his family is fundamentally wrong. I'm disappointed in Michael. You should stay here and not return to that house.
Those were his words to me. I knew I wasn't wrong. Feeling relieved, I made up my mind to pursue a divorce. A few months after leaving the house, I received a call from Michael.
Hey, how much longer do you plan not to return? Have you forgotten what day it is this Saturday?
He appealed to me in a panicked tone. Oh right, it was the day we were supposed to invite your coworkers over to our new house.
Yes, exactly. We've been planning it since we moved, remember?
But won't your mother-in-law be coming that day? Why don't you tell your coworkers that my parents are visiting and refuse them?
There's no way I can say that. Moreover, I have invited a new boss for my department that day. If I cancel now, it could affect my future at work. I don't care. You're the one who kicked me out, remember? Is this the time to be arguing? Stop sulking and come back already. We need to start preparing for everyone's arrival, or we won't make it in time. I'm not returning to that house. What? Are you okay with jeopardizing my job? I don't mind. I plan on leaving you. Leaving? Are you serious? Yes, I've been thinking about it since I left the house. My parents also agree with me. Your parents too? They're just as out of touch as you. Do what you want. I'll have my parents help with the preparation for inviting my coworkers. I don't need you anymore. You're going to regret this. That's my line. Goodbye. I hung up the phone abruptly. Right about now, Michael is probably frantically contacting his in-laws, preparing to invite colleagues from the office. Since his in-laws have done as they please so far, it would be good for them to taste some hardship for once. Then, during the problematic weekend, our home phone rang in the afternoon. When I picked it up, Michael, with a flustered voice, said, why is Emma answering the phone? I was calling my new boss's home. Why? Well, because it's my house, of course. Emma's house? Don't tell me, the new boss is Emma's father? Yes, my father used to work at Michael's company. He had been away from the main office for a few years as an advisor because a related company was launching a new business, but it was decided that he would return to the main office next month and become Michael's boss. I knew, of course, but I couldn't leak the internal announcement until the information embargo was lifted, and I kept silent even from Michael, my husband. I thought he would notice when he saw the boss's name in the internal announcement, but it seems he didn't check properly. Michael started to plead with me desperately. My mother has prepared expensive ingredients and good alcohol, but no one is coming. When I contacted my colleagues, they said there was a big fuss at the company because I refused to invite the new boss to my house. If the boss doesn't come, no one else will, they started saying. Emma, please convince your father to come to our house. Please persuade him to clear up everyone's misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? It's not a misunderstanding, it's a fact, right? Michael, you said don't ever invite my parents to our house, didn't you? I didn't know your father was my boss then. The situation is different now. Quite a convenient excuse. I've asked you many times if you wouldn't regret it, haven't I? Well, it's too late to regret now. You're responsible for cleaning up your own mess. I hung up the phone without waiting for Michael's response. I told my father about the phone call from him, but, of course, my father had no intention of going to that house. There's no need to go to the house of a man who disregards his important daughter and her family. My father was even more incensed. My father is scary when he gets angry. He was excited to buy expensive ingredients and alcohol for today, but I guess all their spending ended up being for nothing. The next day, Michael came to our house with a pale face. Emma, I'm sorry for everything I've done until now. Let's start over again. Please come back home. My father, instead of me, who was looking at him with a dumbfounded face, responded, Start over? Do you even understand what you've done? Michael, turning pale, prostrated himself before my father. Sir, I apologize for my actions. I am here today to apologize. You've ignored my daughter for months now, yet you've never once bothered to visit her. I didn't think you'd turn out to be so untrustworthy. No, that's not it. I've been busy at work. You're not so busy you have to work on the weekends, or so I've heard. Weekends, well... Michael stammered. Likely his mother was visiting him every weekend. Michael, who never did housework, would have given up if it weren't for her help. I'm sure his mother was also looking after him during the weekdays, taking advantage of my absence. My father, guessing this, sternly said, Never mind. You seem to get along quite well with your parents. It seems like you two jumped into marriage before you were ready to be independent. That's not true. I respect Emma's feelings and even rejected the idea of living with my parents. You're still saying that? It's natural for a couple to decide whether to live with their parents. Yet, you kept harping on Emma for rejecting the idea and never listened to her after. How is that prioritizing Emma's feelings? Well, that's... And marriage means both families become relatives, yet you invited your parents to your home every weekend and told us absolutely don't come over. How dare you disregard Emma's family, us? I didn't know you were going to be my boss. If I'd known that, I would have invited you first before my parents. That's exactly what I mean when I say you're self-centered. You don't get it at all. People like you shouldn't be in a leadership position. My department doesn't need someone as selfish as you. But sir, silence. Get out of my house now. Don't ever show your face here again. Afterward, my father advised his superiors to remove Michael from his department and reassign him to a regional branch. No one defended Michael, who was already known for his selfish behavior. Even his parents, who had doted on him, couldn't follow him to a remote region. Now they can only see him once a year, if at all. Meanwhile, I've been living comfortably at my parents' house after finalizing my divorce with Michael and focusing on my work. I work hard weekdays and spend weekends with the people who I love.
When I think back to my past lifestyle when I was not able to live such a normal life, the free life I have now is comfortable and irresistible. From now on, I want to cherish my parents and live at my own pace.
I witnessed my husband cheating. I think it's rare for someone to have that experience. Most people would probably confront their husband after finding proof of their infidelity on their phone. However, I saw it with my own eyes. And it happened in a place and at a time when I never imagined that so many people would witness it. Well, I have always felt suspicious about their relationship, but I never expected to witness my husband cheating in such a public place. My name is Christina. I'm a stay-at-home mom with a 6-year-old son. The day I witnessed my husband cheating, he had the day off from work, and we had planned to go out as a family. But when I woke up, my husband was already gone. I received a message from him saying,
"I'm going to take care of my sister, who has a fever of 102.2 degrees Fahrenheit. It seems like no one is home today, so I'll be back in the evening."
A message saying that came in. I let out a big sigh. I had told my son that we were going to an amusement park today, and he had been looking forward to it since the day before. I had heard that my husband had been put in charge of a big project recently, and he hadn't had a break in the last 6 months. So this was supposed to be a rare chance for our family to spend time together. But he went to take care of his sister instead. She's supposed to have a fiancé, so he could have left her to take care of herself. Besides, my husband has a sister complex. The reason he started dating me, it was because he said I looked like his sister and was wonderful. I remember feeling uneasy about that. I had met his sister a long time ago, and she was a very beautiful and kind person. So I guess looking like her is the highest praise my husband could give me. But I couldn't help feel creeped out by it. My husband used to say,
"I want a boy and a girl."
and he frequently initiated sex. But since our son was born, the frequency has decreased noticeably. Now, it's non-existent. We're still young, and my husband used to be a person who enjoyed sex. So I suspect he might be doing it with someone else instead of me. Well, I could forgive him for betraying me. It's annoying, isn't it? But the problem is that he disappears, even on days when he has off from work, like today. It wouldn't hurt to play with our child occasionally, even on a day off. Our child is daddy's boy, and he starts crying when he realizes his dad isn't around. My husband is too indifferent toward our child. He doesn't even prepare birthday presents, and he doesn't even attend school events, no matter how much free time he has. Sometimes he comes home early, but he immediately locks himself in his room and plays games nonstop. He hardly sees my son's face anymore. At this rate, my son, who used to be a daddy's boy, will start to see his father as a stranger. Oh, and my husband said he was busy with a big project. That was a lie. Because he was rarely home, I asked a former classmate who works at the same company as my husband, "Is my husband really that busy?" I've heard that before. "No way. If anything, your husband is known as a window-side employee who doesn't have much work and always looks bored. He goes home on time every day." They told me this while laughing. I thought, I knew it. That's exactly what I thought. After all, he was supposedly in charge of a big project, but his salary was still around $1,500, and he didn't look tired from working overtime. In fact, he looked rather well rested. This also made me suspect he was cheating. Carrying a ton of dissatisfaction, I finished preparing breakfast. I checked the time and tilted my head. Strange. Normally, even if I don't wake him up, my son would be up by 7 a.m. But it was already past that time. If we didn't hurry, he'd miss the nursery school bus, so I rushed to wake him up. In his room, he was still asleep. So I tried to wake him up by saying, "It's morning, wake up!" Instead of a response, all I heard was a pained groan. Worried, I reached out to touch my son's face and felt his forehead. It was very hot. I called my son's name and gently shook his shoulder. He barely opened his eyes and said, "Mom, I can't breathe," he told me. I almost panicked. At that time, there was an outbreak of a disease at the nursery school. And I couldn't help but think, could it be my son too? I had heard that there were cases where children died, so I seriously thought my son might not make it. I tried to call my husband in desperation, but he didn't answer at all. With no time to wait for a reply to an email, I contacted my mother to ask her for first aid advice. She was a nurse, so I thought it was best to ask an expert. Following my mother's accurate instructions, I quickly prepared an ice pillow and measured my son's temperature. It was over 102.2 degrees Fahrenheit. I called an ambulance and made sure my son drank plenty of water while waiting for it to arrive. According to my mother, there was a possibility of heat stroke as well. Considering the risk of infection, I wasn't allowed to ride in the ambulance, so I called a taxi and headed to the hospital where my son would be taken. During that time, I kept calling my husband, even though I knew it was pointless. As expected, it was useless. With no other choice, I left a message online, hoping he'd see it and come if he was responsible enough. Upon arriving at the hospital, I waited in the hallway outside the emergency treatment room, praying for my son's treatment to be over. In the past, my father had been taken into an emergency treatment room and never made it out alive. What if my son doesn't make it either? As I imagined the worst, my mother, who had come to support me, encouraged me. "It'll be okay. It'll be okay." And then, an hour later, my son was saved. But they said it was best for him to be hospitalized for a week. So he was taken to a hospital room. In the end, my husband didn't come home that day. The next day, I went back home to get some clothes for my son and decided to bring him some fruit as a get-well gift. I thought I'd also greet the doctor who had helped us the day before, so I passed by the emergency treatment room. But suddenly, the area became chaotic. Did someone get brought in? Thinking I might be in the way, I decided to postpone my greeting to the doctor. As I was about to go to my son's room, I saw a man and a woman on a stretcher. They were barely covered with a thin blanket and looked almost naked. It seems they're still joined together. It seemed they were stuck together during intercourse. I had never experienced it, but it must be tough. But being transported like this must be so embarrassing. And I was thinking this and trying to pass by. I made eye contact with the man. Under normal circumstances, it would be an awkward situation. But it was different for me. I froze. That's because the man was my husband. "What are you doing here?" I exclaimed in surprise.
Well, I caught my sister's cold and,
My husband was at a loss for words. At that moment, I was also confused. What were the odds that my husband would be here after my son was just brought in yesterday? Why was he naked and being transported? And who was the woman he was with? Various thoughts were swirling in my head. During my confusion, I made eye contact with the woman my husband was with. Even in my disarray, I knew this woman was my husband's affair partner. As I glared at her, I realized that her face looked very familiar. "Why on earth is Christina here?" It was that voice that reminded me. That's right. The woman was my husband's sister, Brenna. The events of that moment felt incredibly slow. I had been suspicious that my husband was lying about taking care of his sister and meeting another woman. But I hadn't expected this. even if he came to visit our son, he shouldn't have arrived stuck together with a woman. And that woman was his own sister? This is just too much. Since they were being carried away on a stretcher, I had to suppress my urge to confront them and wait for their treatment. They wouldn't be able to escape anyway, so I decided to confront them later. With those thoughts, I went to visit my son, my original purpose, with a sick feeling deep inside my chest. I spent some time in my son's room, trying to sort out my feelings. When I checked my phone, there were tons of messages from my husband online. As expected, they were all trying to cover up the situation. He didn't even mention our son being in the hospital. I decided to keep ignoring him and then waited another hour. The doctor who had taken care of my son yesterday appeared. The doctor smiled at me and said,
"Your son is very healthy. He seems to be recovering faster than we thought."
His fever had gone down and his condition had completely stabilized. Initially, we were worried about an infection, but it turned out he had heat stroke along with a cold.
"Did you make him drink a lot of water? That was the right thing to do. Your son must be happy to have such a smart mother."
The doctor even praised me like that. It was more thanks to my mother. I should give her some fancy meat as a present next time. I deeply bowed to the kind doctor and expressed my gratitude. But it wasn't hard to imagine that I'd soon face a huge ordeal. Just as I was relieved about my son's condition, my anger was bubbling up inside of me. Mama's face is scary. I scared my son. I quickly put on a smile and told my son, "I'll be back soon." As I left the hospital, I called my husband, who had left over 100 missed calls. The moment he answered the phone, he started making excuses.
"It wasn't what it looked like. There was a reason."
And so he started making excuses. He got his priorities wrong. Shouldn't he be worried about our son first? Well, there was no way a man who was so engrossed in an act with his own sister, without caring about our son, would worry about him. With a husband like this, I worried about our son's future. I couldn't see my husband's personality improving, so I decided to divorce him. Life might be tougher, but I can do it for my son's sake. So, you were busy with that even when our son was suffering, huh? I bet you were doing it whenever you had free time, right? And with your own sister? That's just disgusting, I said to him. He was speechless. I continued. "Oh, and by the way, I've already reported this to your parents. I won't tell your company, though. It would be a problem if you couldn't pay alimony and child support. So, goodbye." With that, I said my final words to my husband. 3 days later, my son's health had fully recovered earlier than expected. So I completed the discharge procedure and returned home with my beloved son after a long time. Of course, my husband wasn't there. After that incident, my husband came to apologize in person, but I handed him the divorce papers I had already signed. He begged for forgiveness, saying, "This was the first time. Forgive me for just one mistake. You're all I have." But in a cold voice, I told my husband, "You're still lying at this point. I already know everything. Your sister confessed it all." Yes, I anticipated that my husband wouldn't agree to a divorce easily. So to silence him, I first approached his sister, who was involved in the affair. "Dear sister-in-law, I heard you're going to have a wedding ceremony with your boyfriend soon. Congratulations." "Ah, thank you." I wanted to send a congratulatory message, but I came up with a great story. Want to know what it is? "You're not planning to tell everyone about this, are you?" "Yes. I want everyone to know what kind of person you are. This will make it clear in one go." I smirked. "Please don't do that. It would ruin my life." Pretending to consider, I continued with a smile. "Well, I guess I have no choice. How about this? I'll keep quiet about this if you'll tell me in details how many times you did it with my husband. Then I'll keep quiet. Of course, your brother will still feel betrayed. What will you do?" Without hesitation, my sister-in-law confessed everything. "Please don't tell him. I'll tell you everything." And she easily confessed everything. When I told my husband about it, he fainted from the shock of being betrayed by the sister he loved more than anyone else. After waking up, he signed the divorce papers and left the house with a heavy heart. From there, I went through a lawyer to demand a divorce, custody of our son, alimony, and child support from my husband. He initially haggled over the amount, but when I whispered in his ear, "Do you want me to spill the beans to your company?" he replied,
All right, I'll pay the amount you requested.
He left the lawyer's office. After that, for some reason, his company found out about the incident, and he was called in and severely reprimanded. A month later, my husband got fired from his job and now works at a food factory, putting strawberries on cakes to pay for alimony and child support. For some reason, people at the factory knew what he did, and he's always the subject of rumors among young girls, making him feel uncomfortable. As for my husband's sister, despite me not revealing the truth, the whole incident came to light, and her engagement was called off. Apparently, her boyfriend, who suspected her of cheating just like me, had hired a private investigator to check on her. She was demanded a large amount of money as compensation for this broken engagement, and now she works at a nightclub. The other day, her ex-boyfriend gave me a photo of them in the act, saying,
Use it if you need to.
I wondered what kind of nerve he had to give such a thing to a woman like me, but I decided to keep it in my drawer. In case my husband contacts me or tries something, I'll gratefully use it. I moved back to my parents' house for a fresh start, and am raising my son with their help. My parents, who lived far away, were sad that they couldn't see their grandson often, so they offered to help as much as possible. I don't want to rely on them too much, so I'll only lean on them when I need to. By the way, my son has been in perfect health since that high fever, as if it never happened, and has been awarded for the perfect attendance for 3 years now. He seems to have completely forgotten about his biological father and enjoys every day. That makes me happier than anything else. Oh, I almost forgot. Our family has grown. It's Angel, the white cat sleeping comfortably on my lap. When I went to say goodbye to Angel, who often came to play in my yard before moving, he jumped onto my lap as usual and then stayed still like a statue. I was sad to part with Angel, so I brought him with me to my parents' house. Now he's close with my parents, and he's just as important to me as my son. From now on, I want to watch my son grow up warmly, with my parents and Angel. That's what I think about as I sit here in the rocking chair on the porch, stroking Angel.
In the winter of my 3rd year of high school, my life changed completely. "Lance, it's your mom." My frantic father grabbed my shoulder, yelling as I returned home from school. We rushed to the hospital, and there was my mom, connected to numerous machines. 3 months left to live. That's what the doctor told us. My name is Lance. I'm 32 years old, single, and without a girlfriend. Since my mom passed away from cancer, my father and I have been living freely as 2 men. My mom lived much longer than expected after being given her prognosis. I think it was all thanks to my father. My mom had a collapse but recovered and regained some of her strength. She didn't realize she had cancer until then, and the mental shock must have been immense. Her young age contributed to the rapid progression, and by the time we found out, it was already too late. After much thought, my father decided to return to their rural hometown and let her receive care there. Their hometown was a naturally rich area, crossing over 2 prefectures from where we lived at the time. My father quit his job, and I moved with him to the countryside. He started farming using old connections and delivered homegrown vegetables to my mom, creating a peaceful time. My mom seemed happy to be back in her hometown, and whether it was a good thing or not, she spent 3 years in a palliative care ward. Even after my mom passed away, my father stayed in the countryside and continued farming. He says farming suits him, and he's still happily living with my mom's memories. Now I'm back in my original prefecture and working, but I visit my father often. It's a 2-hour drive on the highway. Driving became a hobby after getting my license in the countryside, so I always enjoy the drive. What my father worries about is not himself, but me. Every time I visit him, he asks, "Lance, have you found a girlfriend yet?" When I dodge the question, he always sighs. Well, I guess so. I'm 32 this year, and I want to show my father his grandchild's face. But I have no chance to meet anyone right now. Someone introduces me to someone. Just as I was thinking that, an arranged marriage proposal came my way. A big shot at a client's place suddenly approached me, asking if I'd consider an arranged marriage. This big shot, Mr. Tran, is a friendly person who doesn't flaunt his position and has always been concerned about me. But I was skeptical about the sudden proposal, thinking there must be a catch. He showed me a picture, saying we might get along well, so I decided to meet her. On the day of the arranged meeting, my father came from the countryside, and we headed to the hotel where we were supposed to meet.
I couldn't fit into my old suit, so I had to buy a new one,
my father said, laughing. Both of us were nervous, and we arrived much earlier than the scheduled meeting time. Later, the arranged meeting partner and her parents arrived, and we exchanged greetings as we all took our seats. The girl's father began speaking without even greeting first.
"Considering this is a meeting for my elite civil servant daughter, I hope you don't mind if I ask a few questions to see if you're suitable."
Who calls themselves an elite civil servant? As I swallowed the words I almost blurted out, my father made the same face beside me. Actually, this isn't a formal arranged marriage meeting, but rather an introduction to an acquaintance. We knew each other's names and photos, but there were no detailed profiles about our jobs, education, or hobbies. So, it's natural for them to want to know more about me. I knew the girl was an ordinary office worker, and her father was a civil servant, but I wondered what he meant by elite civil servant. More importantly, I didn't like the condescending attitude of her father. Then the girl and her mother started scolding him, saying, "Dad, that's rude." But her father didn't stop.
"What are you talking about? I'm just asking the obvious questions. So, what's your job? And tell me about your father's work too."
Although I was annoyed by the girl's father's condescending attitude, I tried to suppress my anger and answered, "I work in the IT industry. My father is a farmer in the countryside." As I was speaking, the girl's father interrupted me.
"Farming?"
"Listen to people until they finish talking." I tried to continue, but her father wouldn't stop.
"So, what about your education? Which university did you graduate from?"
At that question, I hesitated for a moment. I dropped out of high school in my 3rd year when we moved to the countryside. My father suggested transferring to another school for my future, but I wanted to use that money for my mom's treatment, so I declined. So, in terms of education, I only completed middle school. When I honestly said I had only completed middle school, her father started laughing mockingly.
"A farmer's son with only a middle school education? I came here thinking Mr. Tran introduced us, but what a guy. You're not a match for my daughter, so go home."
At those words, my father started to stand up, and the girl and her mother glared at her father. But I held my father back and laughed.
"I don't mind, but are you sure it's okay on your end?"
When I said that, the girl's father suddenly became angry.
"What do you mean?"
"Mr. Tran introduced me because he thought we were a good match. I'm asking if it's okay for you to look down on me without knowing the reason." As I said that, her father glared at me, but I ignored him and looked at the girl. "You're Selena, right? We went to the same high school." Yes, the reason I agreed to the arranged meeting was because she was an acquaintance. "Lance, so you're Lance, aren't you?" Selena said happily. Selena and I were classmates in the same high school. We were in different departments, but we were in the same club and got along well. We had grown apart since I suddenly moved away, but back then, including other friends, we were always together. I heard her name from Mr. Tran and saw her picture, but I was skeptical that the bright, kind, and popular Selena would still be single. But I was convinced when I met her today. That's when I remembered what Selena was troubled about back then. Selena's father was angry listening to our conversation.
"Hey Selena, what's going on?"
Selena answered, looking annoyed. "That's because he was my high school classmate and we used to be close friends. Can you just go home already, Dad?" I was surprised by her words. Selena's father was, of course, furious.
"You're coming home with me too. A farmer's child and a high school dropout aren't worth anything. Why did Mr. Tran introduce me to someone like this?"
Selena stood her ground against her red-faced father. That's what I hate about you, Dad. Thanks to you, I'm still single at this age. Besides, there's a reason he dropped out of high school. A reason? No matter what the reason, a dropout is a dropout. In this world, it's all about education. For an elite like me, dropping out is unthinkable. Graduating from college is a given. There's no way a dropout can live a decent life. How much more does he have to look down on me to be satisfied? Just as I was about to argue back, Selena's mother, who had been silent until now, slammed the table. Our eyes were drawn to her. I told you not to judge people by their education. What's with the attitude? What's so great about you? You only got into a private university because your parents paid for it. You're only at your current job because of your parents' connections. Your parents may be respectable, but there's nothing admirable about you. I was surprised by her sudden remark, but it was true that Selena had said this before. Her father was always looking down on people, and it was embarrassing to be with him. That was what Selena was troubled about back then. I wonder what kind of person he was, but meeting him like this, it was indeed true. Selena confronted her dumbfounded father. That's right, stop the attitude, okay? I told you yesterday too. Why do you always get in my way? What do you mean get in your way? I'm thinking of your happiness. How does putting someone down lead to my happiness? My biggest happiness right now is for you to leave immediately. What kind of a thing to say? I didn't raise a daughter like that. I don't even remember being raised by you, Dad. I appreciate the money you've given me, but you never did anything fatherly. It was all Mom who took care of me, because you were always cheating and never came home. I was surprised by her words and tried to stop Selena. Hey Selena, calm down. But Selena wouldn't stop. Selena's mother nodded beside her, glaring at her father. Suddenly, the father began to panic. Where did you? No, that's not it. Thinking his daughter and wife didn't know, he suddenly took out his phone and started operating it. Just a moment, it's a work call, I'll go home first. Telling a transparent lie, they got up from their seat and left in a hurry. When the father was gone, Selena and her mother bowed to us. My dad was dumbfounded, but hurriedly stood up and said, Please raise your heads, and patted my shoulder. Selena, if you're okay with a son like me, let's talk. Seeing my dad like that, I laughed, and Selena laughed too. After that, we talked about the past and the present, and I bravely asked Selena out. Actually, I had liked Selena in high school. I didn't want to be teased, so I never said anything, but I planned to tell her before graduation. However, she moved away before that. Selena accepted my proposal with a laugh, and we started dating with marriage in mind. I told Mr. Tran, who had brought the matching offer, about what had happened. As you heard, I couldn't accept that, father. I had heard beforehand that the girl's father was rude, but the daughter was nice. 6 months later, I gave Selena an engagement ring, and we began to prepare for marriage. But before that, she asked me to accompany her on a small errand. I went to Selena's family's home. My future mother-in-law greeted me, and my future father-in-law was inside as well. He was the same as ever, glaring at me when we saw each other. You must have said something to Mr. Tran, right? Because of you, I'm being talked about behind my back at work. How could you have any connection with Mr. Tran? He works for the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry, and Fisheries. You, a middle school dropout, aren't someone who can easily talk to him. There's no way you can make my daughter happy. I won't let her marry you. The self-proclaimed elite civil servant father, who seemed to be a window side job at the city's Agricultural and Forestry Promotion Office, was badly regarded by those around him because of his attitude. He said that the affair had also been discovered at work, and he was being looked at with white eyes, but that was his own doing. I didn't flinch, even though he lashed out at me in a bad mood. Mr. Tran said there were problems with your attitude to begin with. Also, you wouldn't even listen to me during the matchmaking meeting, but I studied robotics in high school. I had to drop out in my 3rd year to take care of my sick mother, but now I use my skills to work on IT and agriculture. My father is a farmer, but he used to work at the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry, and Fisheries, and Mr. Tran was his boss at the time. Now, my father and I are exploring various things as smart farmers, so we still have a relationship with Mr. Tran. My future father-in-law looked surprised. I said firmly, even as a middle school dropout, I have enough income to live comfortably with Selena. Besides, I have my future mother-in-law's permission to marry, so I don't intend to ask for yours. At that, my future father-in-law became furious. Don't mess with me. If I don't approve, Selena won't get married. Then, my future mother-in-law brought out a piece of paper. It was a divorce form. Seeing it, my future father-in-law, of course, shouted, What do you think you're doing? The errand Selena wanted me to help with was this. Her mother wanted to get a divorce and asked me to be there. Her mother had been forced into an arranged marriage. Even though he cheated, she could only keep quiet about it. She endured it all to keep her daughter from being inconvenienced. After her daughter grew up, she thought being from a single-parent family might be a disadvantage in a marriage. Well, Selena said that it might have been better without this father anyway. Anyway, with Selena's marriage settled and no more need from him, a serious truth was revealed. She finally decided to divorce him. I stepped forward on behalf of my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law has evidence on your infidelity and has consulted a lawyer. Let's release her from this situation already.
Shut up. Don't you outsiders butt in. If you divorce, how are you going to live? You haven't worked much. You can't live on your own. You should just serve me for the rest of your life.
Everyone sighed at his outrageous attitude, and I spoke up. Don't worry, we've already secured a job for my mother-in-law. Plus, considering the compensation for infidelity and the money spent on your mistress, my mother-in-law will receive a decent amount of money, so she won't have to worry about her living expenses for a while. Apparently, he had been supporting his mistress for a long time, but it was recently revealed that he had even given her a car. My mother-in-law's patience had reached its limit. Of course, the lawyer said that the money spent on the mistress should be deducted from the property division. My mother-in-law presented the divorce papers again. If you don't write it down right now, I'll report everything to your parents. What do you want to do? Then, my father-in-law turned pale. It seemed that even though he acted so arrogantly, he couldn't stand up to his parents. Well, if his parents found out, it would affect his job, which he got through connections. By the way, he bragged about being an elite civil servant, but he was just a local government employee. Only his parents were elite. He had no real ability of his own and lives off his parents' coattails. Even so, he had come this far without any trouble as long as his parents were alive. But he had to accept the punishment properly. I silently handed him a pen. Then, my father-in-law signed the papers with his head hanging down. My mother-in-law took them and brought the packed luggage. Seeing this, my father-in-law was shocked.
You've even packed your bags?
I picked up the luggage. I'll take responsibility for my mother-in-law, who is also my family, and deliver her to her new home. Don't worry, we'll pick up Selena's stuff soon. With that, we loaded the luggage into the car, and Selena and my mother-in-law got in, and we left. 2 hours later, we arrived at our destination.
Oh, you're here.
My father greeted us. When my mother-in-law said she wanted a divorce, my father offered to let her work at his place, although it was a bit far away. She said she had no attachment to the place she had lived until now and wanted to take up the offer. My father found an apartment nearby, and my mother-in-law moved in to start her new life. After that, my mother-in-law successfully divorced, and she received her fair share of property and compensation. Now, she's living more vibrantly than ever before. My father-in-law couldn't pay all the compensation, so he had to give up his house, and eventually his parents found out. Thanks to being disowned by his parents, things got tough at work, and he couldn't bear it, so he quit his bragged-about government job. He thought he could easily find another job, but he'd been rejected in every interview. He managed to get a job at a supermarket, but he caused trouble with a customer after a few days, and now he's looking for work again. Selena and I are getting married next month. I never thought I'd be reunited with my first love, let alone get married. It's like a dream. I'm living a happy life.